morning, evening, or night, wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Wednesday, 25th June, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Iran finds itself navigating a precarious situation after a ceasefire with Israel, marked by increased internal security measures. These measures include mass arrests, executions, and military deployments, particularly in the Kurdish region. Since the start of the war with Israel, an Iranian rights group has documented 705 arrests for political or security charges, with many accused of espionage for Israel. The Iranian parliament has unanimously approved a bill to suspend all cooperation with the IAEA, potentially limiting access to Iranian nuclear facilities and hindering independent damage assessments following U.S. strikes. This move signals a hardened negotiating position with the West. The Iranian government raised the prospect of ejecting inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. The Iranian parliament has also proposed harsher punishments for those accused of espionage. In response to U.S. strikes against Iranian nuclear sites, Iran fired missiles at an American military base in Doha, Qatar. The Embassy of Iran expressed gratitude to the freedom-loving people of India for their support. Iran's foreign ministry's spokesperson stated that its nuclear installations were badly damaged by American strikes. Demonstrators rallied in Tehran, showing support for Iran's military. Iran has moved to punish spying and proclaims victory over Israel and the U.S. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is deciding on his next steps after a ceasefire with Israel. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been sheltering at a bunker and avoiding electronic communication, fearing assassination attempts, and has not been seen publicly or heard from in almost a week. Iran executed 3 more prisoners accused of spying for Israel, according to the state-run IRNA news agency. Turning to the United States, President Donald Trump and U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth expressed doubt about the extent of damage to Iranian nuclear sites from U.S. bombing, despite earlier claims of total destruction. Trump described intelligence as inconclusive at a NATO summit, while a leaked Pentagon assessment indicated the Iranian program was set back only a few months. The CIA indicates that Iran's nuclear program was severely damaged by strikes. Experts also question whether Iran moved approximately 400 kilos of enriched uranium before the strike, which could now be hidden elsewhere. President Trump stated that U.S. and Iranian officials would hold talks as the ceasefire between Israel and Iran holds. Simultaneously, the Iranian parliament voted to halt cooperation with the IAEA. President Trump has questioned the severity of the missile strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, citing inconclusive intelligence that set back the nuclear program. According to President Trump's envoy, the Iran-Israel ceasefire is holding, and talks with Iran are promising. President Trump will meet with NATO allies to discuss a spending increase. Top administration officials pushed back on questions about the effectiveness of U.S. airstrikes. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that U.S. strikes had destroyed a key facility for turning highly enriched nuclear fuel into a working bomb, and that the Iranian nuclear program was set back years. He criticized a less optimistic U.S. intelligence report. The Trump administration is planning to limit the classified information shared with Congress regarding the Iran attack, according to sources familiar with the matter. During the NATO summit in the Netherlands, President Donald Trump reiterated his claim of total obliteration of Iran's nuclear program, escalating pushback on early Pentagon analysis of Iranian nuclear sites damage. President Trump compared the U.S.-Iran strike to Hiroshima, downplaying intelligence reports, arguing the damage was severe even though available intelligence reports were inconclusive. President Trump said the US, will meet with Iran, but downplayed the need for a nuclear agreement. President Donald Trump's spectacular military successes in striking Iranian nuclear facilities reveals a contradiction at the heart of his foreign policy. The pivot from diplomacy to destruction in Iran carries profound implications for the nuclear standoff with North Korea. President Donald Trump claimed victory after US forces attacked 3 key nuclear sites in Iran. In Israel, life began to return to normal on the second day of the ceasefire with Iran. People in both countries were still haunted by the brief, intense war as the ceasefire held for a second day. An Iran-Israel truce has taken hold. On the international stage, the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that it was too early to assess the damage to Iranian nuclear facilities from US bombs. Pope Leo XIV is urging all sides in the Israel-Iran war to, un eld quo, project the logic of bullying and revenge, and ardere quo. The US strikes against Iran have created a dilemma for Japan, which would have been accused of adopting a double standard if it did not decry the US actions after criticizing Israel's attacks on Iran. Gulf states have long worried about being drawn into a regional war as they balance relations with Washington and Tehran. The bombing of Iran may teach an unwelcome lesson on nuclear weapons, either discouraging countries from pursuing weapons or prompting the opposite effect. The fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran might not hold, while Trump's actions were making it difficult for foreign governments to trust the United States. China is vigorously pursuing economic revitalization and technological advancement, navigating both domestic and international hurdles. Premier Li Qiang is spearheading efforts to transform China into a consumption powerhouse, aiming to bolster both national and global economic expansion amidst challenges like declining foreign investments and trade tensions. To spur domestic spending, the People's Bank of China, PBOC, has allocated a 500 billion yuan $69.68 billion relending quota, complemented by targeted financial support and incentive. Efforts are also being directed to ensure timely payments to small and mid-size enterprises, NES, an initiative spearheaded by Premier Li Qiang through a State Council directive to mitigate involution-style competition, potentially extending to the semiconductor sector. The government is promoting a new quality productive forces growth model, emphasizing technological breakthroughs, industrial upgrades, expanded use of domestically developed large language models, and attracting foreign investment. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is projected to generate $1.60 trillion in annual revenue by 2030. China also plans to increase gold production by 5 to 10% over the next 3 years, according to the 2025-2027 Gold Industry Development Action Plan released by the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology and 8 other agencies. Advancing technologically, China is seeing progress in several key areas. Researchers in China and Hong Kong are developing micro-robots for clearing infected sinuses, having successfully tested them in animal sinuses during preclinical trials. Though potential risks such as device retention and public skepticism remain. DeepSeek, a Chinese AI model, is gaining traction, with new developments focusing on giving AI agents a face, memory, and a potential role in daily life. A Chinese university successfully flew its Phaeton 2 hypersonic vehicle, proving key capabilities, including the successful acquisition of real flight data for a rocket-based combined cycle RBCC engine using a kerosene hydrogen peroxide propellant. However, the integration of AI in China's energy sector is facing hurdles due to high costs, uncertain returns, talent shortages, and data security concerns. Internally, China is focusing on oversight, while externally it is navigating complex relationships. The top prosecutorial body has established a new department to investigate crimes committed by judicial officials aimed at tackling misconduct within the legal and security apparatus. The Ministry of State Security, MS, criticized a recent CIA campaign aimed at recruiting informants from China, calling it a desperate attempt to justify budget increases by hyping up the China threat. China is tightening controls on 2 chemicals used to make fentanyl, but maintains it is a U.S. problem, a stance disputed by the U.S. government. The Shanghai Gold Exchange, SKE, has opened its first offshore physical gold delivery vault in Hong Kong to increase international participation and strengthen China's role in the global bullion trade. More than a dozen Chinese car manufacturers have pledged to pay their suppliers within 60 days, an initiative prompted by the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers, CAM. Environmental and geopolitical challenges are also on China's radar. The country is bracing for a second tropical cyclone within 2 weeks, expected to make landfall between Hainan and Guangdong. Amidst rising uncertainty over global trade, industry insiders suggest Chinese companies should relocate their entire manufacturing ecosystems abroad to strengthen their overseas expansion. Chinese military analysts have been closely following the U.S. strikes on Iranian facilities, particularly the GBU-57 bunker buster, praising the success of the B-2 stealth bombers and the bomb's performance, while also noting the bomb's limitations against deeply buried targets. Finally, President Xi Jinping will not attend the upcoming BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro. Premier Li Qiang will lead the Chinese delegation. Turning to the United States, a bipartisan group of US lawmakers introduced a bill to ban federal use of China-linked AI tools like DeepSeek, titled the No Adversarial AI Act. The proposed legislation aims to prohibit federal agencies from procuring or deploying AI technologies developed in China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The Trump administration has stated that China has not done enough to keep fentanyl out of the United States. Beyond these nations, a Chinese-led study proposes a global green energy network using solar and wind to meet the world's energy demands in 2050. The interconnected system is projected to produce 3 times the needed power at a lower cost than independent regional systems. Supercell, owned by Tencent, plans to launch titles like Clash Royale as WeChat minigames. Brawl Stars is already available on WeChat, known as Weixin, in mainland China, while Clash Royale is being developed for a September release. The European Parliament has often clashed with China over issues like human rights and trade. However, under President Roberta Metsola, a reset has been initiated to normalize relations. Australia. The Erin Patterson mushroom trial awaits jury deliberations after the judge's final instruction. Patterson is accused of murder and attempted murder connected to a deadly mushroom lunch. The origin of the dried mushrooms may have been an Asian grocer. New South Wales community service workers are getting expanded long service leave benefits. Susanne is pushing for the Liberal Party to champion women's issues and is reviewing policies. A Mission Australia study indicates that moderate social media use is correlated with better mental health for young Australians. Australian journalist Antoinette Lattouf won her case against the ABC after being wrongfully terminated for her social media posts about Gaza. The Salvation Army's Flying Padres provide support to remote communities in the outback. Many young Indigenous Australians believe their country is racist, with discrimination reports rising sharply in the past decade. United States. Donald Trump defended Benjamin Netanyahu, calling him a great hero and dismissing his corruption trial as a witch hunt. Trump emphasized their shared challenges fighting Iran and Netanyahu's dedication to Israel. He also lauded NATO's increased defense spending target as a big win. A UK parliamentary review into Harry Dunn's death will not examine actions of the US government, focusing instead on FCDO support to the Dunn family. Controversy surrounds the first CDC vaccine panel meeting under Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., due to critical appointees and conflict of interest questions. Usha Vance learned of her husband, J.D. Vance's selection as Trump's running mate shortly before it was announced. Zohran Mamdani's primary victory in New York is viewed as a win for pro-Palestine politics. The U.S. sanctioned Mexican banks, alleging cartel money laundering, but Mexico disputes the claims. Faith leaders are challenging a Texas law mandating the Ten Commandments in classrooms on religious freedom grounds. Donald Trump expressed indifference to a potential U.S.-Iran nuclear agreement. U.S. Representative LaMonica Nincover faces assault accusations tied to an immigration center visit. U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy announced that the U.S. will stop funding the Global Vaccine Alliance Gavi. Conflicting reports have surfaced regarding alleged U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, with Trump claiming obliteration and intelligence reports suggesting otherwise. Trump dismissed news coverage of a U.S. intelligence report on an attack on Iranian nuclear facilities, claiming it devalued the military, and asserted that B-2 pilots were upset by such rhetoric. NATO allies largely committed to increased defense spending, aiming for 5% of GDP by 2035, following pressure from the U.S. during a North Atlantic Council meeting at the NATO summit in The Hague. Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong emphasized Southeast Asia's ability to shape its own destiny amidst US-China competition, envisioning the region as an inclusive arena for both powers. China. Analysts highlight the strategic importance of bombers for China's military, despite other advancements. Chinese experts are skeptical of claims that US strikes obliterated Iranian nuclear facilities, citing intelligence reports suggesting the contrary. Taxation. The Australian Taxation Office, ATO, recommends filing taxes from late July onward. Japan faces a confluence of domestic and international challenges. The nation grapples with a pervasive sense of decline, with 70% of Japanese citizens believing the country is in decline. This sentiment, a sharp increase from 40% in 2016, is fueled by economic stagnation, political alienation, and the social effects of immigration. The country is also seeing record-high cases of work-related mental illness, with cases rising by 172 in fiscal 2024 to 1055, marking the sixth consecutive year of increases, with power harassment being the leading cause. In the realm of international affairs, Japan has lodged a formal protest with China concerning new construction in a natural gas field within the East China Sea, highlighting ongoing tensions over territorial and resource rights. Japan has also voiced its opposition to potential 25% tariffs on automobiles, noting that Japanese automakers produce approximately 3.3 million cars in the U.S. annually, while only shipping 1.37 million. Furthermore, NATO's increased defense spending goals might amplify U.S. calls for Japan to increase its own defense spending. A Japanese court sentenced a U.S. Marine to 7 years in prison for sexually assaulting a woman on Okinawa. President Donald Trump will retain control of the golden share related to national security in the U.S. steel buyout by Japan-based Nippon Steel, with future presidents inheriting this control. Societally, Japan is experiencing heightened anxieties related to natural disasters. Earthquake swarms around the Takara Islands and a volcano eruption in Kyushu have raised public concern. Compounding this, a manga artist whose past work is believed to have predicted the 2011 disaster has now predicted another calamity in early July, though seismologists dismiss any connection between the recent seismic activity and the manga prediction. In other developments, the Japanese pop group Tokyo disbanded following a misconduct scandal involving member Taichi Kokubun. Nicholas Tarasenko, a 15-year-old from Hull, has moved to Japan to pursue professional sumo wrestling, becoming only the second Briton to join a professional sumo stable. A British Army veteran, who lost both legs and his left hand in Afghanistan, became the first triple amputee to sail solo across the Pacific, arriving in Japan. An analysis shows that the recent heat wave in Japan was made possible by climate change, leading to a surge in ambulance calls for heat-related illnesses. Turning to Taiwan, a team found that rowing from Taiwan to Japan was possible 30,000 years ago. The voyage in a log boat without sails required highly skilled rowers who could adjust their course with the Kuroshio current. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine saw 7 Israeli soldiers killed in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, when their armored vehicle was struck by an explosive during a tunnel search operation. Concurrently, in the occupied West Bank, 4 Palestinians, including a teenage boy, were killed by settlers and Israeli troops. Adding to the tensions, dozens of Israeli settlers attacked a Palestinian West Bank town, leading to a confrontation where Israeli forces killed 3 Palestinians. Amidst these events, Palestinians feel increasingly abandoned as the war in Gaza continues, even as a ceasefire between Iran and Israel remains in effect. Focusing on Israeli politics, former President Trump has voiced strong support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, denouncing his prosecution as a witch hunt. Trump pledged U.S. intervention to save Netanyahu from his trial, which stems from a 2019 indictment on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Trump has even suggested the trial should be cancelled. It has also been reported that Netanyahu has had long-held desires to attack Iran, but was previously deterred by the U.S. and his own security chiefs. Turning to Iran, the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission has asserted that the war has significantly delayed Iran's nuclear program. Despite this claim, questions linger about the effectiveness of U.S. and Israeli strikes. President Trump has noted that the truce between Israel and Iran is holding, even after he criticized both countries for violating their agreement. The global oil market has shown surprising resilience, with crude oil prices currently lower than before Israel's attack on Iran, despite an initial price surge following the attack. Finally, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte compared President Donald Trump to a daddy figure intervening in a schoolyard fight, referencing Trump's repeated criticism of Middle Eastern adversaries. In Kenya, significant protests have erupted against government corruption, police brutality, and poor governance, resulting in casualties and widespread disruption. Marking the anniversary of demonstrations against a disputed tax plan from the previous year, thousands convened in downtown Nairobi. The Kenyan police responded forcefully, using live rounds, tear gas, and rubber bullets. Clashes in Nairobi and other regions have caused at least 16 deaths and 400 injuries, according to the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Amnesty Kenya reports that police caused most of the fatalities. Largely youth-led, the protests involved thousands assembling in Nairobi, leading to the barricading of the Kenyan Parliament and President's office. Banks and businesses in the city center have closed amid the heavy police presence. Demonstrations on June 25, 2024, resulted in 2 protester deaths from gunshot wounds and multiple injuries. Police deployed tear gas and water cannons to disperse the crowds. Ukraine is actively engaging with African nations, presenting itself as a dependable alternative to Russian food exports to amplify pressure on Moscow and bring an end to the conflict. President Volodymyr Zelensky has stressed the importance of ensuring justice for all those guilty of war crimes. Following a meeting at the NATO summit, President Donald Trump indicated he was open to providing additional financial and defense assistance, including Patriot missiles, and asserted that Russian President Vladimir Putin really has to end that war in Ukraine. In Odessa, a Black Sea beach provides a temporary escape from the ongoing conflict. The Council of Europe intends to establish a special international tribunal dedicated to prosecuting high-ranking Russian officials for their involvement in the war in Ukraine. Turning to the United Kingdom, the nation has revealed its acquisition of 12 American-made 35 fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear weapons, which underscores its commitment to participating in NATO's shared airborne nuclear mission. King Charles is set to welcome U.S. President Donald Trump for a state visit later in the year, an invitation that Trump has accepted. The Glastonbury Festival has begun, but not without controversy due to the inclusion of the Irish rap group Kneecap and their controversial lyrics. Meanwhile, UK health authorities have launched an investigation into the side effects of weight loss drugs, prompted by rising reports of acute pancreatitis, with some cases linked to GLP-1 medicines, resulting in fatalities. In legal news, closing arguments have commenced in Britain's High Court in the copyright infringement case brought by Getty Images against the artificial intelligence company Stability AI. NATO's current approach of appeasement towards President Trump is delaying the resolution of crucial matters, including the conflict in Ukraine, strategy regarding Russia, and potential reductions in U.S. troop presence in Europe. As previously mentioned, the UK's purchase of F-35 fighter jets demonstrates its intention to be part of NATO's shared airborne nuclear mission. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum is contemplating legal action against SpaceX, citing debris and contamination from Texas-based rocket launches. These launches, originating from Starbase, allegedly impact Mexican territory. Guanajuato State experienced a mass shooting at a St. John the Baptist celebration, resulting in 12 deaths. Another shooting in Arapuato saw gunmen kill 11 at a religious festival. President Sheinbaum labeled the event deplorable. Furthermore, the U.S. Treasury Department has accused 3 Mexican financial firms, including one tied to a former chief of staff of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, of facilitating the fentanyl trade through cartel connections. Ukraine is bracing for a potential escalation in attacks as Russia's long-range drone program becomes increasingly lethal. With the northeastern city of Kharkiv particularly vulnerable, President Volodymyr Zelensky is moving forward with plans to establish a special international tribunal to prosecute high-ranking Russian officials for the full-scale invasion. Discussions are ongoing regarding the tribunal's location and operational framework. The war in Ukraine has prompted Russia to see a need to reassess its military posture. Experts predict a rebound in Russia's military capabilities following any cessation of hostilities. Spurred by perceived Russian aggression and pressure from Donald Trump, NATO countries are increasing their defense budgets. The 2022 invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin has further accelerated this trend. Former President Trump recently met with President Zelensky, suggesting increased NATO spending could deter future Russian aggression. Vietnam is set to abolish the death penalty for a range of offenses, including embezzlement, vandalism of state property, and drug-related crimes. This legal shift could potentially save the life of Truong My Lan, convicted in a massive $12.50 billion banking fraud, by converting her sentence to life imprisonment. Officials suggest this move will also aid in the extradition of suspects from other countries. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh remains hopeful about achieving a positive outcome in the upcoming deadline for a U.S. trade deal, envisioning benefits for both nations. He also stressed the need for a balanced approach in managing relations with both the United States and China. In the United States, Richard Gerald Jordan, a 79-year-old Vietnam War veteran, was executed in Mississippi for the 1976 kidnapping and murder of Edwina Martyr. Jordan had been on death row for the longest duration in the state. India's pharmaceutical industry faced scrutiny after a study revealed that approximately 1/5 of cancer drugs tested failed quality assessments, with the majority of implicated manufacturers based in India. A Lancet study brought attention to a concerning vaccination gap in India, identifying 1.44 million children as zero-dose, which has contributed to a slowdown in global immunization progress. In a collaborative effort, India partnered with Poland and Hungary for a pioneering space station mission, launching a 4-member crew aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, using a Crew Dragon capsule. Former President Trump asserted that he leveraged the potential of trade agreements to mediate a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Turning to the United States, Zohran Mamdani, an Indian-origin Democratic candidate, ran for mayor of New York City, emphasizing affordable housing as a key campaign issue. Although Andrew Cuomo won the Democratic mayoral primary, Mamdani's candidacy was viewed as a sign of changing political dynamics. Mamdani, if successful, would have made history as New York City's first Muslim and Indian-American mayor. Globally, a Lancet study exposed a worrying standstill in immunization rates, leaving vast populations susceptible to preventable illnesses. The study specifically pointed to India's significant vaccination deficit, noting the 1.444 million zero-doses children as a major factor. Brazil is grappling with the tragic death of a hiker who fell from an Indonesian volcano, as rescue teams have recovered the body. Simultaneously, the Supreme Court is hearing a significant case against an army colonel and general accused of plotting to keep former President Jair Bolsonaro in office after the election. Turning to international affairs, Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov announced that President Vladimir Putin will participate in the upcoming BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro via video conference due to the ICC warrant against him. In other economic news from Brazil, JBS, a meatpacking giant previously fined billions for bribery, has commenced trading on the New York Stock Exchange, a move some link to the deal-oriented atmosphere during President Trump's tenure. France recently saw the restoration of Eurostar services after engineers successfully repaired a high-speed rail line. The repair was necessary due to the theft or cutting of 600 meters of rail cable, which had caused significant delays and threatened to disrupt the NATO summit. In separate news from France, Marine Le Pen, the far-right leader, has been barred from presidential candidacy for 5 years by French court. Consequently, Le Pen has asked her protégé to begin preparations for a potential 27 presidential bid. Malaysia witnessed a historic promotion, with Johnny Lim Eng Seng becoming the first ethnic Chinese lieutenant general in the armed forces. Meanwhile, the Malaysian appeal court overturned the corruption conviction of Syed Saddiq Syed Abdul Rahman, a former youth and sports minister. Cambodia is currently embroiled in escalating tensions with Thailand, stemming from unresolved border disputes and deepening cultural disagreement. The recent clashes in May have prompted border closures and reduced operating hours, significantly affecting the daily lives of residents, local political dynamics, and the regional economy. Adding fuel to the fire, Cambodia has accused Wat Phu Man Pha, a Thai temple located in Buriram province, of appropriating the architectural design of the famed Angkor Wat, intensifying a pre-existing cultural feud alongside the border conflict. The alleged assault of an Indonesian child in Singapore has ignited a wave of concern and debate within Indonesia, particularly regarding the safety and well-being of Indonesian citizens traveling or residing in Singapore. This incident is prompting heightened vigilance and scrutiny of safety protocols. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, a proposed housing policy change is stirring controversy. The Indonesian government is considering reducing the minimum plot size for subsidized housing, a move that has drawn criticism. Opponents argue that such a reduction could lead to inadequate living conditions, potentially impacting the physical and mental health of residents. The debate continues as stakeholders weigh the potential benefits against the risks to public welfare. Armenia is facing heightened political tensions as Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan accuses Archbishop Bagrat Galstanian of plotting a coup. The accusation led to the arrest of the senior cleric. This follows the arrest of another key political opponent the week prior, signaling an escalating crackdown. Thailand is poised to recriminalize cannabis, reversing its decriminalization of 3 years ago. The health minister has already signed an order prohibiting cannabis sales to individuals lacking a medical prescription. This move signals a likely reclassification of cannabis as a narcotic. Such action could dismantle the burgeoning $1 billion cannabis industry. Many cannabis shops, particularly those catering to tourists, may be forced to close. Costa Rica's judicial system has ordered the release of approximately 200 foreign migrants. These migrants were previously deported from the United States. They represent countries such as Afghanistan, Iran, Russia, and several African and Asian nations. Their arrival in Costa Rica occurred in February, stemming from an agreement with the U.S. that originated during the Trump administration and has faced scrutiny from human rights groups. The United States, led by President Donald Trump, plans to increase financial pressure on Spain due to its failure to meet NATO's defense spending commitments. Despite a general agreement among NATO allies to increase military expenditure and Trump's commendation of those who complied, Spain was specifically cited for not meeting the required targets. As a result, the U.S. intends to double Spain's costs related to their existing trade agreement, effectively penalizing the country for its defense spending shortfall. Pakistan's Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, has signaled a readiness for meaningful dialogue with India, though preconditions exist. India insists that discussions must include the return of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and address the issue of terrorism originating from Pakistani soil. Separately, a landmine explosion in northwest Pakistan led to 4 fatalities and several injuries. Local police have confirmed. Germany's Federal Prosecutor's Office has issued a new arrest warrant for a Syrian man suspected of terrorism, after 4 men were stabbed and critically injured in Bielefeld. Meanwhile, Germany is significantly expanding its military, supported by substantial investment. The aim is to become the largest army in the European Union, responding to perceived threats from Russia. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new measures to support Ukraine, including financial aid and military equipment. Canada is also grappling with ongoing wildfires, particularly in western provinces, leading to air quality alerts in several major cities. Across the Atlantic, France is preparing to host the upcoming Summer Olympics in Paris, with security concerns and infrastructure readiness remaining key priorities. President Emmanuel Macron is also facing ongoing domestic challenges related to pension reforms and cost of living pressures. Shifting focus to China, the government has announced new economic stimulus measures to bolster growth amid concerns about a slowdown in key sectors. China is also continuing to expand its diplomatic influence, particularly in Southeast Asia and Africa. In the United States, the political landscape remains intensely polarized as the presidential election cycle heats up. The Supreme Court is set to rule on several high-profile cases, including those related to immigration and voting rights. Economically, the U.S. Federal Reserve is closely monitoring inflation data as it considers future interest rate adjustments. Qatar has emerged as a crucial mediator in the volatile dynamics between Iran and Israel. Following the 12-day war, Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani successfully brokered a ceasefire between the two nations. This mediation occurred despite a direct attack on Qatar itself, which followed Iran's targeting of a U.S. military site located within the emirate. Despite this attack, and Qatar's assertion of its right to self-defense, the nation's diplomatic efforts led to a truce, averting further escalation of the conflict. Pakistan is grappling with the aftermath of an explosion in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, near the Afghan border, where 4 individuals lost their lives after one stepped on an explosive device. Shifting focus to Russia, a Belarusian tourist faces attempted murder charges following a violent assault on an Afghan boy at a Moscow airport, raising concerns about xenophobia and safety for refugees. Colombia is grappling with the aftermath of a devastating landslide near Medellin. Heavy rains triggered the disaster, claiming at least 11 lives. Rescue teams are tirelessly searching for those still missing amidst the debris. They are also providing aid to the many residents impacted by the catastrophe. Amidst the picturesque canals, Venice is currently hosting the wedding celebration of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez, a 3-day affair that has stirred controversy among environmental activists. The opulent event, expected to be attended by numerous celebrities and members of the global elite, is being criticized for its reliance on super yachts and private jets, modes of transportation deemed unsustainable within the delicate ecosystem of the lagoon city. Zambia experienced a disruption to the funeral proceedings of former President Edgar Lungu. The solemn event, taking place in Johannesburg, was halted by a court order. Zambia's Attorney General sought the order, and a judge in Pretoria granted it at the Cathedral of Christ the King. This action underscores the continuing tensions between Lungu and the current president, Hakainde Hichilema Deda. Greece is grappling with a significant wildfire on the island of Chios. The blaze, suspected to have been ignited by a discarded cigarette, led to the arrest of a Georgian woman who now faces charges of unintentional arson. This fire, occurring amidst a series of other outbreaks, has already consumed an estimated 40,000 hectares of land. China is gaining a mathematics expert as Joshua Zal, renowned for his solution to the three-dimensional Kakia conjecture, departs the University of British Columbia to join Nankai University's CERN Institute of Mathematics. Furthermore, China National Offshore Oil Corp has solidified its presence in Central Asia's energy sector through a new agreement within Kazakhstan's oil and gas industry. Mexico, in its southern state of Chiapas, is bolstering law enforcement with armed drones deployed to combat drug cartels contesting control of the Guatemalan border. El Salvador is seeing legal action in the U.S., where a judge intends to release Gilmar Abrego, wrongly deported during the Trump administration, into U.S. immigration custody. NATO, pushed by the United States, has committed to increasing military spending over the next decade, amidst U.S. President Trump's calls for European allies to boost their defense contributions. Serbia faces mounting pressure as students issue an ultimatum to the government, demanding snap elections and urging citizens to continue pushing for change. The Philippines may once again play a logistical role for the U.S. military in the Middle East, with discussions resurfacing about providing support similar to its involvement during the Iraq War. Peru is grappling with threats against its educational institutions, as over 1,000 schools face extortion demands from criminal gangs who threaten violence against schools and teachers. Syria has experienced a deadly church attack, raising security concerns for the country and its minorities and placing the government under scrutiny. Simultaneously, the World Bank has approved funding for infrastructure and reconstruction projects in Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. Kyrgyzstan has passed legislation prioritizing the Kyrgyz language over Russian, a move intended to bolster national identity amid regional concerns about Russian influence. Zambia is attempting to legally block the private burial of former President Edgar Lungu in South Africa, filing court papers to prevent the event. Tonga has yet to release significant details about a cyber breach compromising its health records, which occurred 10 days prior. Croatia has seen the chance discovery of an 18th century sunken boat near the stone walls of Dubrovnik, its medieval city. Sri Lanka is facing criticism for its treatment of LGBTQ individuals who continue to experience violence while government promises to repeal colonial-era laws remain unfulfilled. Nigeria reports that at least 14 soldiers were killed in clashes with gunmen in the country's troubled northern regions. Papua New Guinea is struggling with mass prison breakouts, which police attribute to the country's overburdened courts and correctional facilities. Ireland recently welcomed U2 guitarist The Edge, David Evans, as a citizen after he was among more than 7,500 individuals granted citizenship. Space exploration is expanding its horizons with astronauts from Hungary, India, and Poland going to the space station for the first time, sponsored by their governments and ferried by a private company. Iraq and Lebanon are set to benefit from World Bank funding, as the organization has approved over $1 billion for infrastructure and reconstruction projects in both countries, along with Syria. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.